Howdy, y'all. Welcome back to Some Antics. Today I'm joined by Alistair Shepherd. Alistair, hello.
Hello.
Welcome to Some Antics. I'm thrilled to have you on. We've, I think, bounced around a couple of the same Discord servers. Steph, you're too kind. Thank you so much for gifting those subs. Just off the bat, too kind. Um, yeah, but Alistair, you and I have bounced around a few of the same servers. I believe we were both in Andy Bell's server for some time, and now we're both in Front End Horse, which I'll put a link to in the chat. But I'm super thrilled to have you on. Would you like to introduce yourself for folks who might not have seen you around?
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Alistair. I'm a front-end dev in Edinburgh, in Scotland. I work for a company called Series 8. We do kind of all sorts of kind of marketing, e-commerce, very front-end heavy stuff. I am really into kind of CSS, image performance, or just general front-end performance and general accessibility. Kind of really took the front end and then went kind of back to the front end because I don't have any creative skills to count.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I don't really do too much in terms of projects online, but I blog a little bit and talking about image CDNs, which is why I'm here today.
All right, yeah. So on the subject of like image CDNs, right? I think it is fascinating that for something seemingly simple as images, we have to have like a whole infrastructure around making them performant. So, can you kind of talk to us about like why do we need to optimize images and kind of what is that like landscape like?
Oh, I mean, I think really in the question of why the blame iPhones to a certain extent, in that it's a lot of the reason is mobile devices and every screen size and high density displays. Because really, it's kind of when we were building websites 10 years ago and the image was 400 pixels wide and it was generally speaking, always going to be 400 pixel wide, then that's fairly easy. But when with responsive design, with responsive development, we have kind of this one image that could be anything from like a hero image, 1920 pixels wide, down to 300 pixels wide and everything in between. And you see kind of, depending on how people implement these systems, they've got 10, 20 images between their biggest and their smallest to close the gap, just to reduce the size of images transferred, particularly to mobile devices.
Yeah, it's like, as like it's this challenge of like when you're at home, you could be using, like, not to say everyone has a great internet connection at home, that's absolutely not the case, but you're more likely to be like on a wired like ethernet connection or something like that. Like, you're probably more likely to have a stronger connection at home than when you're out and about. um but yeah, just introducing that complexity of you could be out and about and using mobile data is, I think, just, man, yeah, just the variety of devices and stuff, the variety of image needs. That's especially as like I think like cameras get better and stuff like that too. Just images themselves are getting bigger.
Absolutely, and I mean, especially work on lots of sites that are kind of we build the CMS, we build the system, and then hand it off to the client to populate with content, and they handle that. And they're shoving a 10 megabyte image in there that they've uploaded from whatever camera or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, even for your biggest image, you need infrastructure to shrink it to make it the right size. And I think it's also one of those things where the new technology improves, make it easier for people, and therefore expecting it to be easier. So it kind of self-perpetuates. So you can't really expect someone who isn't super technical to upload the image in the right format, in the right size, already compressed, and all of this. You kind of have to handle that beyond
Mm-hmm.
beyond the initial image.
There's been and thank you. There's been so much like subscribing, gift subscribing action that I just have to thank people. Steph, thank you again for the gift subs to start. Chan, thank you for resubscribing. Travis, thank you for all those gift subs. Or thank you for giving the gift subs to Sociable Steve. Mike, thank you for the sub. Man, yeah, thank y'all. Oh, I think I saw. Did I see Brent subscribing as well? Thank you all so much for subscribing. We're on like level 2 of a hype train. Let's see if we could get this at least to level 3, y'all. I think we could do it. Aaron says as technology advances, it becomes easier to screw up. Yeah, because like you don't know what's expected of you, and this image looks really nice. Like it's not like there's really like a red flag saying, hey, this could be a problem for some people. So it's like, yeah, there's just not uh not really a whole lot of surfacing there. So um and then I've been hearing some things about new image file formats. Can you talk about those a bit?
That's a kind of perfect use case for image CDNs, and one we'll hopefully be getting into a bit. But yeah, turns out that I mean PNG and JPEG have been around for ages, and still generally you don't get too much better until recently. AVIF has been around since 2015, I think. But hit Chrome last year. It's in Firefox with a flag, I think. The flag is maybe just being or has been removed, but yeah, and AVIF is generally 30% smaller than JPEG. I've forgotten WebP too. So yeah, like there's lots new ones coming out, and it's amazing. But I think as much as WebP and AVIF decrease the file size compared to JPEG, and that's always great. JPEG XL, which is coming out in the next few years, will be an absolute blow things out of the water, because it's the JPEG replacement. It does everything, and at least for most use cases on the web, it's looking like it's gonna beat everything and be amazing.
Interesting. I had not heard at all of JPEG XL, so interesting that like even still like we're getting support for AVIF and WebP, and even then people are like, no wait, we can make the like oldie but goldie formats like even better as well. That's awesome.
Exactly, yeah. It's an interesting. I mean, there's the classic kind of computer science thing where you trade off storage and memory, storage processing costs, and that's kind of the thing with JPEG XL, and that the codec has like millions of different ways to kind of create images, just with, so it has like kind of, oh, let's just create a gradient command within it. So rather than encoding every pixel, you just go, oh, there's a gradient here. And then that's really short, and it's kind of baked into the codec rather than it being kind of pixel per pixel, which means you can save lots on it. But yeah, I mean, the big thing with the new formats though is WebP only recently Safari support, AVIF no Safari support, only recently Firefox, and JPEG XL is nowhere to be seen in browsers quite yet.
Gotcha. Okay, so yeah, all sorts of like really like recent innovations in like image storage and processing to compensate for a variety of resolution and data needs regarding the images that we have on our site, some of which are like small icons and then some of which are like big hefty hero images. And content delivery networks are going to like help us orchestrate all of this so that I don't have to, at least, because already this is seeming like I would be getting in over my head if I were to do this myself.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, not that you couldn't, but if you try to undertake all of this yourself, it can be an absolute nightmare. And especially, I mean, I imagine a lot of people here are Jamstackies, Jamstackians or whatever. Then I think the big use cases you put a 11T image on a site, and it does a great job of processing all of your images and stuff like that. But potentially, if you've got quite a few, it adds 10 minutes to your build time. So it's kind of, there's a lot going on, and there's a lot, even if you're not building it yourself, even if you're just rolling an off-the-shelf solution, it's not easy and it's not simple, and there are trade-offs.
Absolutely. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and start sharing my screen. That is the wrong view. Here's the correct view. There we go. We did it. I know how to use my Stream Deck and hit the right keys. Yeah, so y'all go follow Alistair on Twitter. I also want to shout out, while we've got you here, your excellent website. This whole thing is lovely. And it's hard to tell based on, you know, the little time that you've got up, but like this is a live view of, like, this will change throughout the day based on your time of day. But you've got like a sunrise mode and a sunset mode. It's just an absolutely lovely site, and like just everyone should go check it out. But yeah, so
Thank you.
we're gonna be doing some CDN stuff. How should we get started? Like what are gonna be our first steps, or what are we trying to accomplish today?
So earlier today, I know you tweeted about it too, but we uploaded some images to a wee website we could play around with of Tuna. I was thinking we kind of jump into a code pair, and we can just have a wee look at those images,
Okay.
kind of the size of them in DevTools, and then how we can bring a image CDN into the equation.
Sounds good.
So if we just stick an image tag in, and we can load one of those Tuna images.
You know what? Images are self-closing, and I should know this. All right.
And
cool. And then
if we pop a source on there, and it was image cdn sample.netlify.app/tuna.jpg. Tuna1 it was, wasn't it?
And I've got that link in our own chat over here.
Cool, perfect.
And I will add. God, that's massive. That is truly massive. Also, my cat is in fact a villain. Tuna.
We'll deal with resizing it later.
Tabby cat glares into the camera from a pile of blankets. Gotta have that alt text.
Perfect. Yes. Need to take lessons in alt text writing from you. Okay, cool. So that's kind of our original image. Do you want to open up the Chrome DevTools? You're on Chrome, yeah. And we can have a look at the network tab.
Yes.
And find that image.
I will likely need to refresh the.
Yeah, and it may be easiest to filter by image in the top there, so we can. We don't end up with all of the JS and assets and such.
Yeah. I think I need to. Oh God. That shortcut doesn't work. Is it? I'm always.
That's the one, yeah.
Here we go. Okay. Now we should
cool.
Get it. So okay, and here we go.
So there we go. And if we go to the headers,
you got it.
What we've got here is tuna1.jpg, and if we look at the content length down there in the response headers, we've got a 2.4 megabyte image. So that's the just source kind of big old image that you sent, and it's probably thousands of pixels wide, I would expect.
Probably.
We could probably check in the elements tab, but regardless, not a big deal. So that's like not an image we want to ship, right? Right.
It's huge, and frankly, like it's a great picture, but it's not worth, especially the resolution of it, like the actual like quality of it. It's just not worth sending like 2.4 megabytes.
Absolutely. So the quickly jump in now to kind of explain what image CDNs are. I think it's probably a good time to do it.
Okay.
Basically, they are kind of between, you have your server and your the client browser, and generally most of your assets are going broadly directly between the two via a few extra steps. An image CDN kind of sits in the middle. So what you can do is instead of requesting images directly from the website, you can request them from the image CDN, and then depending on how you set it up, you maybe have your media stored with them, or you can kind of forward that request onto your original web server.
Okay.
So what we can do is kind of, by doing that, kind of have someone in the middle that can kind of reprocess our images.
Interesting.
And we can instruct it on what we want to do it, just what we want it to do, just based on the URLs.
This is really interesting because, like, you know, usually when people talk about content delivery networks or CDNs, they're talking about like, oh, the edge, right? Like the big benefit here is you're hitting a server, or the user is hitting a server that is like physically close to them, and that helps with like response times, and there's cache, and that helps with the response times. I feel like people don't really talk about CDNs as what you're describing as kind of like a middleware. And I think that's really neat.
Yeah, and I mean, kind of getting there actually a little bit with kind of more traditional CDNs with like Cloudflare workers, and Netlify has some sort of edge thing where you can kind of modify markup or assets or whatever as they go through the CDN location.
Okay.
And really, image CDNs are a bit kind of different in that basically it requests your nearest CDN node. So it ends up probably being in the same country as you are, pretty close. If the image you're looking for has already been requested, then it'll just return it to you because they've got it cached. If not, then it'll be sent to another kind of processing server that will create it and then cache it.
Mm-hmm.
So it ends up being kind of almost like a kind of on-demand builder. I think that's what Netlify calls their kind of serverless things, but it's kind of it's server-side run, but only once, and then it's cached forever, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess give a shout out to a friend, CDN.
Yeah, go ahead, Aaron.
I'm always interested to see other ones. But yeah, so there's actually kind of a lot you can do there, because also now you're piping your assets through we're going to use Cloudinary in this demo, and Cloudinary are subjectively maybe the best company in the world for web images. I think they're probably top 5, if not kind of the most experienced. So
okay.
You kind of get the bonuses of all of their expertise for free or for a very small amount.
Yeah.
Cool. So we can run this same image just through an image CDN by sticking the domain, the address of the CDN just in front of the URL. So that res.cloudinary address that I popped over to you, if we just stick that before the HTTPS, then suddenly now this URL is being served through Cloudinary if all's gone wrong, all's gone right even.
All right.
Nothing seems to have changed.
But we've got a new Tuna 1 entry here. Okay. I'm going to actually give this link to the chat as well. Go ahead.
So now by just adding some kind of URL there, you see server Cloudinary.
Oh, yes.
It's the same content length, it's the same image, it's just transferring via Cloudinary. And to be honest, already this is, if you've got a traditional server-side site, this is bouncing it and propagating it into CDNs all over the place, which is already a bit of a bonus.
All right.
But what this now gives is we can now kind of have superpowers with editing the site, editing this image just based on that URL.
All right.
So, sorry?
Oh, I was just saying, all right.
Cool. So I guess first we'll kind of do some basic ones. We can't see that image currently because it's too big.
It's
I guess
massive.
we can deal with that first.
All right.
So
And these are going to be
Cloudberry particularly.
query parameters, right?
Cloudberry doesn't use query parameters. It kind of puts them in the middle.
Okay.
Well, I think it might support query parameters too, but the ones I've got noted down are like URL parameters. So just after the fetch slash, what we can do is, like, if we wanted to resize it, we could do a W underscore and then give it a pixel width, and then throw another slash after that, and just like that, the image is 300 pixels wide.
And it is much smaller.
26 kilobytes, that's a lot better. While we're looking at the image size, we can play a little bit with performance, because we kind of talked about like the different sizes, the different formats, compression, stuff like that, and that this is still like the kind of biggest size image just resized, and that's where we've left it. What we could do is adding another parameter there, separated by a comma, like f_webp.
f_webp, and this is going to set it to be the webp format?
Exactly. Even though the URL is .jpg, it's provided in .jpg. If we scroll down slightly in content type, it's now serving a WebP. And we're now at, I can't remember what the size was before, but 27 kilobytes.
I think it actually went up a bit in bytes.
That makes certain amount of sense too, because we're like JPEG and WebP AVIF and JPEG XL. The real power of them is that but did we let file types become a lie? File types have never been real. You just have to ask a PHP developer that they'll serve absolutely anything under the sun under a .php file type. No problems at all. But yeah, so the real advantage of both the AVIF JPEG XL is that they can compress better. Not that their full size is better, because like if you've got the full size of the image, you can't really make it smaller without losing some data. And that's just kind of lossy compression. Or I guess you can do lossless compression, which you don't notice a difference, but it still does like kind of compress bits of the file that weren't compressed before. So what we could do is add a quality filter too. So another parameter we could do is the Q parameter, which Cloudberry has, and we could do Q, say, 40. So it's kind of a percentage based, and this would give us another one that is, there you go, almost 17 kilobytes. And I haven't really noticed a difference in the image there. There probably was one.
Yeah, let me try. And it's also possible that like it's just gonna be hard to tell just by virtue of like watching over the stream or watching over Zoom. But like even here, like with like the canonical screen in front of me, like I'd be hard pressed to like actually find a difference.
I mean, we can illustrate a difference by going for Q1.
Okay, let's do that.
And seeing how much we go. So that's definitely compressed.
Yes. Particularly, there's a lot of like visual information that's getting lost around Tuna's nose. Poor boy.
And that's just, I mean, different formats compressed different ways. This is how WebP does it. But yeah, so this way we can also control how much it compresses. So just let's have a wee look, see how big that that version is, the Q1.
Yeah, this is oh god,
A nice 5 kilobytes.
not bad. Especially
But
what this was originally like what was it, like 27, or no, it was 2.7 megabytes, and we've gotten it
yeah,
down to a like not great but like passable 5 kilobytes.
oh yeah, I think for a 300 pixel by, I don't know, 500-ish pixel image, 5 kilobytes is pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
But we could probably do better because WebP isn't Chrome. We're using Chrome, and Chrome supports AVIF.
Okay.
So we could see how AVIF copes with that too.
So I presume I would
So
go here and I would just say AVIF.
absolutely.
And maybe just to see. Oh God.
Okay, we maybe need to bump up the quality then too.
I'll remove the quality parameter there. So there's no, like, we're not specifying the compression level there. Or the quality there. We're talking 25 kilobytes. This looks, it's a workable image. I can't notice any deterioration of quality.
And what Cloud Canary provides too is a kind of way to more intelligently adjust quality. So instead of doing Q1, for example, we could do Q auto, and then that kind of adds some like automatic kind of, we're not going to press the image too much level, but we could add a colon and go for something like eco.
Eco, like this?
Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of trying to save as many bytes as possible without having a big impact on the visual quality. It hasn't had a huge impact because this is a very busy image. I think if we were using images that had like a lot more smooth transitions and stuff like that, then maybe it would have been less, but we are still saving there. And we could go Q auto low, sorry.
Okay. And I'm thinking
similarly,
I'm thinking of like every time I've uploaded like a gradient to, like, you know, when you're uploading your Twitter cover image or whatever, like if you upload a smooth gradient, like it comes through like kind of in bands, right? Just because it just absolutely gets crunched up during the compression.
And that depends on like the different image format too, because if you did that, compress that in AVIF or JPEG XL, it would actually compress really quite well. But that's just because how different JPEG does it by reducing, by kind of coming up with little patterns. So you might find a linear gradient suddenly becomes like grainy and such. And PNG does it by reducing the number of colors, so you end up with bands. AVIF kind of adds like a smooth filter, which can work really well for like a gradient or something like that. But if you had as we saw earlier, with this busy image on a low quality, it couldn't really handle that because there was a lot going on. And JPEG XL would do it insanely well because it has that sort of thing built in.
Makes sense.
I think one other thing to show off here in performance is what is for me one of the killer features, besides controlling the width of an image via the URL, one of the killer features of image CDNs is if we change that f_avif to f_auto. What this will do is this will realize that Chrome supports AVIF and it will serve an AVIF. If someone loaded this image in Safari, then the latest Safari, then it would serve WebP.
Okay.
So this is kind of one of the big things that, I mean, you have a more traditional server-side or build step formatting images, and you've got to do all your different image sizes in several different formats. Oh, perfect.
Yeah, I'm confirming. Let's see.
Safari serves like photos.
No. Headers.
Unfortunately, I'm going to struggle to
sizes. Man,
try click on the top one there. in the list headers. No,
I
I'm
think
afraid I'm not sure how
totally,
to
totally
use
fair.
those
I totally
headers.
believe you. Just
Yeah,
wanted to, yeah, just wanted to see. But that's really cool. So it knows what the browser is and it knows what the browser supports. So it's gonna support, like, it's gonna send over the best possible fit for that browser.
yeah. And one of the great things too is it doesn't just is it doesn't. I mean, AVF is a newer format that is most of the time smaller than JPEG, but it isn't always. And the same with WebP, same with JPEG XL. Um, there are some images that JPEG will perform better at because they all work slightly differently.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're able to kind of compare the sizes of formats on a per image basis, which the only really way you can do that is via an image CDN or something like this,
Mm-hmm.
you can go, oh, actually, it turns out I've compressed these images. They're all roughly the same quality. They all look the same. The JPEG's smaller. Then it can serve the JPEG instead.
That's really cool. So that, like, that's not even just relying on heuristics of, I know that, like, this browser supports AVIF, so I'm just always going to give it AVIF. Like, it's on a per image basis, which is really smart. Wow.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And it's something that, I mean, you can do different formats with just HTML using the picture element and source elements. And you
Mm-hmm.
can say, yeah, these are my WebP images. But that will always load the WebP images before it would load any of the others. So there isn't really a way around. There is, I mean, without JavaScript, there isn't a way to do this just on the web platform. You need some sort of kind of intermediary step per image.
Yeah.
So if you scroll to request headers in the headers pane of the DevTools there, you'll see the accept header there. So this is something that all modern browsers have. I think even IE11 has it, where it lists all of the image formats that are supported.
Oh, okay.
So all that, I mean, Chrome adds JPEG XL at some point. It adds it to the accept header. If Cloudinary supports JPEG XL, then suddenly now all Chrome requests will use JPEG XL.
Very neat. Very neat. Okay.
So that's the real kind of between being able to adjust the quality, the size, and the format of images kind of on the fly based on the URLs, you get a lot of control and a lot of things you can do with performance on sites. And I mean, even like our quality one example there was didn't look great in JPEG, but if you imagine that someone's, I haven't really seen this implemented yet. I want to find a project to do it myself.
Okay.
But there's a media query that prefers reduced data.
Mm.
So if people on a kind of, I think it's just on Android Chrome at the moment, you can enable data saver mode. And that lets the browser know via that media query that you want to save data. You could instead decide to serve a not particularly good, but really small image to kind of reduce data caps.
Yeah, because it's much more, like, it's more important that the user has an like a version of the image that, like, maybe it doesn't look great, but it loads fairly quickly, and perhaps most importantly, does not, risk charging them an arm and a leg for their data plan, right? Because as web devs, we need to be stewards of that, right? Um, like, yeah, like, just serve them a version of that image that's fine, maybe not great, as opposed to having them wait forever for an image that may never come, and even if it does, like, it's just gonna charge them a whole bunch. Super cool. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, it's something that I think probably currently you can only really implement it using another source element within the picture element and querying for that. But there is kind of proposals and there's kind of a beta implementation within Chrome to send this kind of information to with outgoing requests. So an image CDN will have that information when the request is done and they can go, oh, with no dev, with no input required from developers, the image CDN can decide to serve a reduced quality image for people with
Oh,
that
yeah.
header enabled. So potentially soon, it's going to be something that developers aren't really going to have to worry about if they're using an image CDN, which is kind of the best fix, really, because as much as it's great for developers to be stewards of this sort of thing, if they don't have to be and it's all handled for you, then that's ideal.
Absolutely, yeah. Because yeah, otherwise you're gonna run up against prioritization issues where business just doesn't see fit to prioritize folks on like slower, less powerful bandwidth. You're gonna run up against developers who aren't knowledgeable about this thing, or the developers who are just like apathetic about it, right? Like, yeah, okay, taking um an unwillingness or inability on the developer's part to solve the image problem, like taking that like out of the picture, is, I think, hugely powerful. Awesome.
Cool. And yeah, Aaron says that that's behind flags. I think it's behind flags for third-party CDNs, but depending on how you set things up, you can. I think it's called user hints, user agent hints, something along those lines. But it's enabled for first-party CDNs. So some CDNs you can already do this and already handle all this automatically. Anyway, so that's kind of the performance stuff I wanted to chat about, really. With this, you can put together a source attribute, you can convert format, you can do quality analysis based on the different formats, you can change the quality levels, so you can do all sorts of stuff here.
Okay.
But
This is where I need to like fess up that like I have a gap of my knowledge. I've never actually done a source set. Can we take a detour and you can teach me how to do a source set? Would that okay?
Absolutely. Yeah, no problems.
Let's do it.
So let's say this image here is going to always be displayed at 300 pixels. Let's just say that. That's going to make it slightly easier. So what we can do is use the source set attribute. So we add that to our image alongside the source.
Okay.
The source kind of acts as a fallback. So for older browsers, that's an option. But if there's newer browsers, if there's newer browsers that support source set, then we can load this. And basically, what it is it's the URL and then a space. So if we want to copy that URL we've already got, and this can be the 300 pixel wide one. So then we'll do a space and then do 300W.
Okay. And that specifies that it's 300 pixels wide. Okay.
Yeah, this is telling the browser, yep, this image is 300 pixels wide. Add a comma, and then we can just like copy and paste that entire thing and change that to 600, for example, and add 600W, and that will. So now, if a device that had a 2 times pixel ratio, for example, came and loaded this. One thing we'll need to actually is set the width attribute on the image tag to 300.
Okay. Yeah.
Because currently it doesn't have the idea of how large it's displayed. So now display at 300 pixels, and I assume you've got are you using a high density display, or?
I zoomed in a couple times.
Okay, yeah. So, I mean, if you're zoomed in, if you're using a high density display, if you've loading it on an iPhone, for example, which I think most phones actually now are 2+ times device pixel ratio, it would load the 600 pixel image instead of the 300.
Okay, so it's making sure that it's not loading a version like it's not loading any in here that would be like obviously a poor fit for the like resolution of the device. If the device is 300 pixels wide and isn't like high density, then it's not going to pick the 600 or the 1200, right? Because there's no realistic scenario in which like they're even gonna see that. Like,
so there's there's kind of two ways to use the source set attribute. I forget about the other way because I rarely use it, but Thomas, I think, has just put in the chat that they use the X descriptor, which basically is, instead of describing the width of the image, you say, this is my 1 times resolution image. So instead of 300W, you do 1X. And then instead of 600, you do 2X. So you're saying, this is my 1 times resolution image, this is my 2 times resolution image. And that's kind of the easy way to get going. But for really big file kind of size improvements, this is, especially working on the type of websites I work on, are like very responsive. So we have like a hero image that scales all the way down to a mobile. So in these cases, the X descriptor doesn't really give me an ability to say, okay, the screen is 600 pixels wide or 700 pixels wide or 800 pixel wide, and the image kind of scales with that. So for that, we'd use the W descriptor, which we had previously, the 300W and 600W. And we'd also use the sizes attribute, which is basically a way of saying, hey, this image is going to be displayed at this width for this screen size. So in this case, if our image is always going to be displayed at 300 pixels wide, then we'll just put in 300 pixels. And this says, okay, now a browser can like load this up, see the image width is 300 pixels. I want to load this at 2 times resolution. What sizes have you got available? 600, I'll take that.
Okay.
So it becomes more like a hint, which is quite a nice way of doing it. And in additionally, this gives you a lot more flexibility because you could say, you can do media queries within the sizes attribute. So you can say min width 768 pixels, for example, exactly like that. And then after the bracket, do say 600 pixels without the curly brackets, just, and then a comma, and then you can list more. So you could do kind of min width 1024 or something like that. Oh, and in this case, we need them the other way around because the first one applies, but you get the idea. And there's also, it's not just this, because I mean, we have some of the superpowers of CSS here too. So if we wanted to, we could use calc, we could use max, min, clamp, all of these. I quite commonly do like, say I've got kind of a container that's maybe 1200 pixels wide. So if the viewport is wider than that, then the content stays that width. But then below that, it's maybe the width of the screen minus 2 rem padding on either side. What I can do is I can do calc 100 VW, viewport width, minus 4 rem. So you can do crazy stuff with this. I mean, particularly get kind of deep into when you're building websites with like a framework or whatever, and it's 3 columns at this size and 2 columns at this size and 4 columns at this size. You can be like, instead of having to go, yeah, the image is exactly this size, this number of pixels, you can go, yeah, it's 25% of the viewport minus 3 rem or plus a couple rem or whatever.
Man.
So with source set, if you provide, I tend to do 5 or 6 different sizes between, I tend to do my smallest size, which is like 300 pixels-ish, and then maybe the biggest that this image is displayed at, whether that's kind of 700, 1000, 1500 pixels, and then do 5 or 6 intermediary ones. Then that combined with the size of the attribute, the browser can pick which one is most useful to it.
Man, okay, that is very cool. Alistair, the web is cool. The web is cool.
the web is cool. And I mean, bringing this back to image CDNs,
Yes.
this is where this really feels good because we don't have to generate these in advance. We can just stick it, just change the URL in that source attribute. And particularly, you know what, I'm gonna grab it, find quickly, because I know several people, including yourself, use 11t quite a bit.
Yes.
You can like kind of make a shortcode that abstracts making the markup and stuff like that too. Have a gist somewhere of that. React component, there we go. I'll just stick it in the chat quickly. I've never heard of it. 11t? What's 11t?
No 11d here.
So I kind of just have like a basic kind of shortcode that okay.
That's
I don't know a way I can show it without
hang on
moving it elsewhere.
Yeah.
But I just have like a basic shortcode that formats a few parameters into the full HTML markup. So this uses the cloud image CDN, so it's kind of specifically for that, but it would be super easy to make it for Cloudinary too. And the amount of code here compared to having to build an image processing system handles pretty much everything I need with relatively, with well, how many? 50 lines of code.
It's not bad. That is not bad.
So it's kind of combining source set sizes, image CDNs. You can do different formats, different qualities. They all come together to make it super easy to manipulate, to work with images.
Very cool. Okay. So is there more you wanted to show off? Anything else you think we should look at?
Yeah, I thought we can briefly show off some kind of for building designs in art direction and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Currently we're just resizing an image widthwise, but you might want to crop an image too. So for example, what we could do with Cloudinary here is we could set, like, add a height parameter. We'll probably want to remove the source set attribute for this because otherwise we'll have to update all of those at the same time.
That doesn't work. It turns out. Hang on, I do kind of want to hold on to this so that like people can look back on it, but I'm just gonna stick it in a comment here at the bottom.
Sure.
Goodness, what is going on there? Okay. Anyways, yeah. So we've got just our source. Okay, cool.
So we can add a height parameter. So h, let's go 150 or something like that. And it will handle that resizing too. Probably not the result we were looking for, to be honest.
No. My poor boy, what have you done to my son?
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Alistair, I'll never forgive you for this.
Okay, right, okay. So you could add the c_fill parameter. And this will... Okay, we've cut off the ears, but that's better.
Yes.
So this, for example, is like background fit cover. Background fill? Object fit cover. Whichever one, yeah. So we can do that too. And instead of doing H150, for example, we could do like AR_16:9.
That sounds like an aspect ratio.
Image and kind of enforce an aspect ratio.
Okay.
And now if we change the width, then the height would update equivalently. I'll probably need to remove the width attribute too.
You got it. There we go.
So now it's slightly wider and it's kept the same aspect ratio. So this is super useful for kind of, you've got a design from a designer and they've said, oh yeah, this image is like always square, or this image is always a kind of video shape or whatever. Then that means you don't have to really worry about that with CSS. You're not sending extra pixels. if you're only going to be displaying a square, you don't need the bits on the edges. And Cloudinary also, you kind of get the advantage of being able to reposition the crop and stuff like that a bit more intelligently than you could do with CSS, for example. I don't think it'll work very well for this example because their thing is you could do G_faces and it would like focus in on faces. I don't know whether they account for cat faces.
I think I've actually seen it before. Oh, interesting. Maybe not.
Well, I mean, that is part of. I tried this earlier with one of the other pictures, and it was not. It focused on the feet or on the wall behind.
Gotcha.
So it was...
I will show an example of this, which is I've been building out a backlog site, and I get a whole bunch of like avatars of like just all the different people that like guest, and I am using like the I believe G is gravity, but like use that to kind of like hone in on their face, because otherwise you get some people who send in like their pictures but like their face is like off here to the like the left or whatever. You kind of want the crop to follow their face so that pictures look roughly aligned.
Yeah, so you get that kind of automatic thing. Thomas has just said that image CDN solutions break when it comes to building. Like, do I have to upload them all before? This is kind of why I wanted to show off instead of... So Ben, you, for example, upload those images to Cloudinary and then reference them in your site, rather than what we're doing here is we are requesting the https image cdn sample.netlify.app tuner.jpg image.
Yeah.
This isn't... we never uploaded this to Cloudinary. We're using their fetch API to basically proxy images. So wherever you have your images already, so if you have them in a CMS, if you have them just in your Netlify build or whatever, you can use like Amazon S3, you basically get them wherever they are. And this is, I don't really show off the kind of media library and stuff like that methods, because this is what I think the easiest for everyone to get involved in.
Yeah.
Because really you probably have your images publicly accessible anywhere, somewhere, so you can just proxy them. Will it upload it to them, or will it literally just like image it? So depends on the image CDN. Cloudinary, we discovered a bit ago that it kind of like, it makes a copy of the source image and then it does its stuff with. Others will kind of like, I mean, it'll make a copy of it, but it'll be kind of hidden away on their servers. But Cloudinary like shows you it in the admin panel.
Yeah. Here I'm logged in on like this burner account you've created for this, and I can go to like the media library, and we can see that here's the Tuna 1 that we've been playing with. Hopefully I'm not leaking any secrets. I don't think so, but
if so, it's not a problem. I don't plan on using this after, so it's not an issue. But yeah, it depends how you want to. Some people prefer to kind of upload their images to Cloudinary, whether it's via plugin or their own integration or manually. I personally prefer to just proxy images, because it means that I just throw my images into my 11T build and I just say point Cloudinary to where my server is, and it will just handle that itself without any uploading needed.
Yeah, just fewer steps lets you stay like in the context of your website, and also you can go through it and like anytime just like tweak the arguments and stuff like that. Like, yeah, cut out the middleman.
While we have a little bit of time, I wanted to show off some kind of a bit more fun effects too.
Yes, I'd love it.
Because image CDNs, like, as much as their main thing is performance and this sort of thing, we can also play around with it a bit more. So why don't we try one of the other images?
Yes.
So we uploaded 8. We may as well use another one.
Let's look at, like, just pull these up just so that everyone can see. There's a very good one.
Nice.
Tell you what. Oh God, I should have pulled in Stephanie, who's in the chat, recently built pullmychat.dev, and I should have done this as like I should have like prepared this as a scene because this is lovely. But
Which tuna?
yeah, which tuna should we do? I'm gonna go through the tunas, and I do need y'all to like call out a number, and the most popular number by eyeballing it will be the one. Here's him getting some lovely scritches. He turns into such a happy triangle when he's getting scritches. Tuna has two shapes. There is happy triangle and angry round.
Angry round.
Um, let's see. What have we got here? He's actually in this one. I'm gonna turn off the
So if you remove the aspect ratio, then
yeah, because this one he actually kind of looks like your boss is just like glaring at you or whatever. Like, aren't you supposed to be working right now? So Tuna 5 is very choice. Let's see. Tuna 6.
I'm gonna be just coming on Saturday.
I think it's here's a spooked tuna. And then finally we've got Tuna 8. I believe
that's definitely after you've just broken production.
And this is the tuna, having realized that you've broken production, has now left the company and is now updating his LinkedIn profile picture.
And new headshot.
All right, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, this. I took this just. He was standing on my nightstand. I just like pulled out my phone. And the lighting and the posture and everything was just like perfect. Like, this was not a professional photo.
You know what? While we're here, this is actually a really good image to show off one of the things I was wanting to show.
Okay.
Cloudinary has lots of kind of extra effects. So one parameter we can add is e_bg removal.
Okay.
I just want to see if it works.
Underscore.
E underscore, yeah.
Oh man, I'm so.
See how it copes. It might take a bit longer.
Oh, okay. There's
not the best, but
yeah.
We use this quite a bit with e-commerce sites because like companies will take a decent photo of a product and then we can just strip the background off to make it transparent instead.
Yeah. Didn't quite work this time, but I'm sure like if there were more colors going on. Yeah.
It was a bit ambitious, to be honest.
Sure.
They're not magic. Okay, cool. Cool. We can pick another one and maybe have a bit of a what can I? Let's go for this one.
What I'm sorry, what are we doing?
Maybe try another image and we can.
Yeah.
I just want to show off one of the less. Well, I haven't yet thought of a use case for it, but one parameter that Cloudinary has and quite a few has is colorize. So we can use e_colorize. And this will, by default, I think, make the image a bit gray. We'll see. Okay,
a bit gray.
Very gray.
A bit gray.
Oh yeah, sorry. If we add a colon and give it like 50, that's like 50%, it will colorize it 50% gray. But we can choose the color. So we now could do another parameter like co_ like RGB, and then you can give basically a hex code. RGB : and then a hex code without the hex, basically.
Okay.
So you could do like FF00FF and get
I've got
a color.
You know what? Hang on. I've got a brand color. You know me, gotta push that brand.
So
okay.
Pop that in there.
Yeah.
I prepared this in advance and I'm hoping I remember the format.
Ooh, okay.
Perfect. So this is kind of like, I mean, it's just a bit of an example of something you can do, but it kind of is an example of there's loads of grayscale stuff. You can convert images to sepia, you can change the brightness, gamma, contrast, all of this just based on parameters in URL, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you could like it's like really big in the designs I was doing, at least like 5 years ago, that kind of duotone. Every website had
Yes.
duotone images.
Yeah, it's like yeah, and inevitably the hot colors to do were like turquoise and like sea green or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So you could like bump up the contrast, put a filter on, and then you don't even need to get the designers involved to make the images. You can just process them automatically. Or oh yeah, orange and blue. That was a common one.
Oh yeah.
If I'd thought of this ahead of time, I would have come up with a URL you could pop in there. But
Hmm. Fascinating. Oh man, there's just so much you can do with this. Well, cool. We are about time. Is there anything else you want to show, or is this you think a good place to wrap up?
I feel like that's a pretty good place to
Awesome.
wrap up. Kind of gone through the performance, art direction stuff, and had a bit of fun with the pink too.
Yeah. All right. Well, cool. Y'all, thank you so much for being here. Please go follow Alistair on Twitter. Go give him the semantics love. Because he's been wonderful. I think we could all agree. Also go check out Alistair's blog. One, because it's got good content. Two, because it's maybe the most lovely blog out there. And you should definitely go take a look at that. This has been great. Y'all should follow if you want more content like this about accessibility and or core web technology. You should go follow Semantics on Twitter to keep apprised of what all the upcoming streams are. And yeah, stick around, chat. I am going to find a streamer to raid. Thank you all for being here. Have a good one. Bye.
Thank you.